Usually got a point.
All right,
Yeah.
ready?
Yeah.
Set.
2,
5, 4.
You're live.
Hi, folks. Welcome. Friday night. We don't normally do Friday night, but Frick is busy tomorrow night. This is going to be first part of a two-part because we have our 19th class of woodworkers and combat wounded vets that are arriving here on Sunday night. So we always do the second half of the class on the Thursday night in the middle of the class so you can get a chance to be a part of it, feel what it's like. Got some good stuff tonight. I'll start off right with a question so we get things rolling. Frick, question please?
This question is from Sneaky Pete. My question is, what metal alloys make up the IBC chisels?
Frick, you changed your voice. You got a tan. What metal alloy?
Sorry.
What?
It was on mute. Try that again.
If you only knew what went on behind the scenes.
This question is from Sneaky Pete. My question is, what metal alloys make up the IBC chisels?
Is that Frick? What metal alloys make up the IBC chisels? Well, let's see if I can't pretend that I know something about that. All I know about the steel, not a metallurgist, not by any stretch, know a little bit just from here being around. I know it is A2, which is steel that has been tempered or quenched by air, as opposed to O, which is oil, or W, which is water. I know they have been cryogenically treated, meaning when they bring it down from being whatever temperature it is, they bring it down to minus some crazy low number, and they hold it there for a certain period of time. And then they double or triple temper, Jake?
Double.
Double temper. So all that hookah kabuka is supposed to mean that that piece of steel will retain its edge. Now, I'll tell you something interesting. This is for those of us that don't know much about steel. So you see this chisel? This was one of the very first Lie-Nielsen chisels. This was in the early development phase. That was taken back to 2001 or 2, I can't remember. And Tom had given me this, or I bought it, I don't remember which, but I had taken it home, and I remember he said to me, he said, now it hasn't been tempered yet, so it won't hold an edge. So it looked just like this. I was so excited. I went home, I sharpened it all up, tried it in a piece of pine, and the edge folded like it was made out of clay. That same chisel, when heated up to a certain temperature, and then rapidly dropped down to room temperature or lower, depending on the process, the austenite particles or the martensite, I can't remember which is which, but one changes into the other. And it's the rearranging of those particles that makes that steel go from being very malleable to being very hard and wear resistant. And a pretty remarkable process. Now, having said all that, I will tell you this. I have in front of me, just in beveled edge chisels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 different brands. And I've used these throughout the years. My first serious chisel would be this one. And I can tell you that for the most part, the difference in the edge retention, with the exception of maybe this one, is not that great. You'd have to be a metallurgist, I think, to really tell them apart. And if there's a difference, I don't think it's more than 5 or 6%. But what I'm going to tell you is the most important aspect of the chisel I've come to feel, and this is just my opinion, is the ergonomics. How does it feel in your hand? Is it balanced? Does it fit? Do you want to reach for it subconsciously? So this was the Ridgeway, made by Marples. And they were so top heavy, you use them all day and my hand would ache. I went over to the bandsaw one day, I just got tired of it, and I cut half the handle off just to make it smaller so it wasn't quite so top heavy. This is the same, this was a Sorby gilt edge. Now these were really expensive chisels at the time. And same thing, these had an impact resistant handle, but again, so heavy, so out of balance, I lopped the end of the handle off of that as well. So the ergonomics, and there's some other things that are important, but ergonomics is number one for me. If it doesn't feel good, you won't use it. So I can't tell you any more than that about the actual steel. I told you everything I know.
Lift your hat back.
Hi, Mosi. Next question, Frick.
Next
He
question.
can come in and make his cameo.
Ready?
Little moose with big moose. What's the next one, Frick?
This one's from Emerson Assis. He's from Brazil.
What's his first name? Emerson?
Emerson, yep. He says for cleaning
Hey, Emerson.
for cleaning dovetails, having a dovetail chisel really makes a big difference. Or can I use a regular low profile chisel and have the same results?
Well, what chisel do you use, Moose? The term dovetail chisel is kind of a afterthought, but the idea is that when you're, look at this, I have a prop right here. When you're coming in and you're cleaning out, so I've made my cuts here in the piece of poplar, I chisel along the bottom, and I want to be able to go into this corner, into that corner without bruising the side. So I'll show you an example of the chisel that doesn't do that very well. It's actually the very first Lee Nielsen. They were modified after that. See how wide it is right here? So if you try to get right into that corner, obviously you're not going to do it with a chisel this wide. But if you don't have adequate relief on the side, you're going to, in the process of trying to get in here, you're going to bruise right here, and it's going to show. So what you need chisels that have the appropriate clearance on the side. Now you don't want to go right from here to here on an angle without a little landing right there. You see that little flat landing? If you do, then you have a knife edge and you'll cut your hands. It's bad enough that when you polish these, that gets really sharp. But if you can imagine it on a slope, so it's actually got a bevel there, that's unusably sharp. So you want a little bit of a landing right there, but that'll allow you to get right into that corner without hitting the side of your tail. So it's really a beveled edge chisel. Dovetail chisel is just another way of describing a beveled edge chisel. And so it only makes sense to me to buy the chisel that has the features that you want. There's no advantage to a chisel like that has big wide sides. This is just I'll say the name, Stanley Sweetheart. And I don't think these guys know what they're doing, to be quite honest with you. In other words, they wouldn't have that big flat side on there. It's a beveled edge, not a beveled top. And yet most chisels up until a few years ago put the bevel on the top instead of on the edge so that you wouldn't end up having that happen. So just buy the right ones the first time and then you never have to replace them. By the way, I found this one, or Jake found this one when we were looking for some for tonight. So that's my very first 17-degree chisel that I made. And you can see how much use it had because it's quite worn.
You don't have a comparison.
I don't have another one, but that's lost a lot of, was used a lot, heavily. Good chisel. Ergonomically, I think these are fantastic. Unfortunately, the handles come off at the most inopportune time. Solved that problem with the IBC. Next one, Frick.
All right, next question comes from Jason Brown. He's asking, what is the best chisel steel?
Well, back in the days when we used to battle this out on the internet all the time on these forums, it was always between 01 and A2. And the argument for 01, which I could never figure out how anybody could make this make sense, was that you could get it sharper, but it wouldn't stay sharp as long, so you had to sharpen more frequently. The argument with A2 was it wouldn't hold as keen an edge, but it would last longer and you wouldn't have to sharpen as often. Well, the determining factor for is it sharp enough is after you've cut through the wood, if you look at the surface left behind and you say, could I improve on that to where my hand or my eye could tell an improvement? If the answer is no, well then why go any further? Well, the A2 will easily do that. So if that's the case, if the A2 will give you as good an edge as you're going to get, Why would you opt for a steel that you were going to have to sharpen 3 times or even 1.25 times as frequently? That didn't make any sense, because the sharpening process means you're stopping what you're doing, you're going over there, and even though my sharpening system is really fast, you still get it all over your hands. So you got to clean your hands off or else it transfers onto your wood. So cryogenically treated A2, I think, is the industry standard, but maybe something will come along. Here's the balancing act. It has to be hard enough to hold an edge, but soft enough that it won't break or chip, and soft enough that you can sharpen it. So the balancing act seems to be in the Rockwell scale somewhere between 60 and 62. And if you don't know what a Rockwell scale is, ask and I'll explain that as best I can. But anything lower than 58, you're just not going to hold an edge long enough. And anything higher than 64, the first time you give it any kind of a shock, you're good chance you're going to break a piece off. So you got to be in that sweet spot of 60, 62. So I haven't found anything that really made a huge improvement over A2, so I'll go with A2 for now. Frick, next, please. Thank you.
Next one comes from Tom Holland.
Hey, Tom.
He says, is there a special mortise grind for softer woods?
Is there a special mortise grind? Why is Tom's name rolling around in my head? Was I just talking to him, or did he just call the other day?
Germany, the August 22nd class?
No, Tom. That's not the Tom, is it?
I don't know.
It sounds like Tom Holland, the Spider-Man.
No. Tom's name comes to my mind. I know we just dealt with him. What did he want? Oh, mortise chisel.
Is there a special mortise grind for softer woods?
Well, I don't think so.
You could, but
I don't think so, only because if you think about it, most everything you do with this chisel is going to be inside the joint. And I think if it's sharp enough, these are typically ground at 30 degrees just to be a little more robust. And if you drop them down to 25, you could, but...
if you think about it, what percentage of
By the way,
mortise...
isn't that a beautiful handle?
What percentage of the mortise is cut with the leading edge?
Yeah.
Explain that.
What are you saying, Jake?
Okay, so when you cut a mortise,
I was thinking with the handle.
all of the sides of the mortise, the important element
Right.
of the mortise, is cut by
Here.
the bevel, not
Actually here, because the bevel forces it back that way.
right.
But
it's not cut with the edge.
does sever the fibers.
It cuts it originally, yeah, but it's not.
When you notice it is when you're doing a through-wedge
end.
tenon,
Right, and
and you're
the
going down
end.
that side, and it oftentimes will fracture. I think a sharpened 30 degree on pine, I think you'll do just fine.
I think if you polish the back,
You can do that if you want.
all of
You can
yours
do that
are.
if you want. Now I want you to tell me about this. I got some yew. Do you remember who the guy is that sent me the yew
No.
from BC? He sent me some logs of yew. I wish I could. If you're on tonight, please, I'd love to say thank you to you again. I think yew, Y-E-W, not you, is some of the most pretty wood. Beautiful stuff. So I made a bunch of handles out of it. And the nice thing about now there's a little bit of a commercial here. The nice thing about the IBC design is that you trap the piece of wood between the ferrule and the end cap. So as you hammer on the end cap, you really don't ever hit the wood. So you can use a light wood or a soft wood. That's actually a soft wood. It's a coniferous, meaning it doesn't have,
Hard
it has
softwood.
needles. It is quite hard, yeah.
Harder than maple.
Yeah, and there's a bowl that Jeff made, a shave bowl and brush out of yew. Actually, I gave him some of that, some of the stuff that I had. But tell me what you think of that. I just think that is gorgeous wood, and I
think
like the
it's-
shape of that handle.
I think the color's faded.
I got a whole set of them here. I really like it. Now I was going to tell them something, and I forget. Next question, Frick, please.
Yep. Next question comes from Anthony Steventon.
Hi, Anthony.
He says, the sides of my chisel have become very sharp. How would I dull the sides?
So what you're going to want is down here. This is where I reclaim my time.
Bottom drawer.
No.
Gotcha.
Nice going, Jake.
What do you? That's it.
What?
The second drawer.
Is it there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I call this reclaiming my time. So, Jeff and his wife, Kim, and Kevin Burris and I have a meeting 3 times a week, and Danny Bell. And anyway, in the meeting, we were discussing one of the things that we find all of us are alike, that you spend half of your time looking for tools or looking for a dust, looking for your respirator, whatever. That used to drive me crazy. So when we made this, so everything has its place. So when I come in, I know if it's not there, it should be there. So when I'm getting into the habit, as soon as I'm done with it, I put it back where it belongs. And my
Most
goodness,
importantly is those calipers.
does that, yes, save me time. All my headgear, my ear protection, my respirator is right there. Instead of, I'm sure I'd spend an hour a day looking for that measuring tape that's sitting in my pocket. So anyway, back to your question. So if you have a chisel that has a really sharp edge from polishing it, get one of these. They're made by Trend. So this is, well, you can actually use your diamond plate as well. This has a, is this CBN or is this diamond? Industrial diamond. Industrial diamond on steel. And you can go in. I would say, you know, you're not going to have your hand up beyond that. So just go in like that. And just roll that edge. And that'll be enough just to take that sharp edge off. Make it a little more comfortable on your hands so it doesn't cut you. Real simple. Oh, watch this. Putting it away.
Frick next.
Next.
Next question comes from Charles Ambriano.
Hey, Charles.
What is the best angle for paring softwoods such as pine?
Well, lovely question. So I'm going to tell you this story. This goes back to this chisel. I don't know what it was. We have a lot of northern white pine. In fact, New Brunswick had pine trees that were reserved by the Crown for mass for the British Navy. And if the Crown seal was put on that tree and you cut it down, then you get hung for that. So we have lots of nice pine. And I use it a lot. I think it's a beautiful wood. It's warm. The problem is when you start chopping it, sometimes those fibers will crush. What are you looking at, Jake?
Just grabbing some.
Fibers will crush instead of cutting, and it's really irritating. And the reason it's irritating, if you can imagine you're doing a dovetail, and the fibers typically will crush to within about that close to the edge, so in between your two tails, all this material has broken out in big chunks, but it never goes right to the edge. It just holds back a little bit. And you put your dovetail together, and then in the process of fitting the drawer or whatever it is, cleaning up the joint, all of a sudden you start to get down through this. And the first thing you see at the base, right here, at the base of the tail or pin, it starts to look translucent. And what you're doing is you're looking into that gap where all that material had broken out. Used to drive me crazy. And it didn't matter how sharp the chisel was, it still happened. I don't know why I thought of this, but I started playing around with what's called the primary bevel. So that chisel has a 30-degree primary bevel. That chisel has a 25-degree primary bevel. What we're talking about is the main angle on the end of the chisel. So I started grinding, so I would grind it down to maybe 22, sharpen it up, try it, keep going. I got to a point where it would slice through that wood and it would leave it pristine, did not fracture. And it has to do with the amount of pressure that is being put on the fibers because of that bevel. In other words, your chisel's going down into the wood, the more obtuse, right word? The more obtuse the angle is, the more this part of the bevel is pushing on the fibers, and it collapses the fibers underneath. So when you back it off like this, that thin edge will slip down in there and not do that. Well, I measured it, it was 17 degrees. So what was born was the RobCosman 17 degree dovetail chisel, or beveled edge. We actually sell them, we sell a lot of them now. And we grind all of these back. You gotta be careful. You asked about softwood. If you try to use that on something hard like a piece of maple, that edge is gonna fold. There's not enough metal out there. But on softwood like pine or aspen or basswood, sometimes even poplar, those woods you can use that on and it cuts beautifully.
For chopping.
Now, yeah, for chopping.
But
yeah,
for paring-
you can pair. You should be able to pair with it on any of the woods. But if you're going to chop, you got to reserve those chisels just for your softwood. So I always have two. I carry them with me. I have a 1/2 and a 1/4. So those are always my 17 degree chisels.
Why don't you
And
show
if-
them the difference?
Well, there's one right there.
No, I mean the difference
Yeah.
on the wood.
Oh. Well, there's a 1/4 and there's a 17. There's a 25 and there's a 17 degree. So you can see the difference in how far back the bevel goes because it's the exact same chisel. I'll sharpen one up if we have time, but I want to get through more questions. But I wanted to say something. What did I want to say? A couple things. I got to hurry because we ran out of time. Got to say hello to Angie. This is Angie. This is Ken's cousin, and you'll see in the picture she's doing up the T-shirts because she and her sister Lynn package up all of our T-shirts carefully. There's a little seal on there. Angie's coming to work here. Angie, you better hurry up. Has she cleaned her? Has she cleaned her her locker?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, she is. So it's good.
Your name's on.
Her name's on
All
it.
clean, ready for pickup.
Hurry, Ange. Also want to say hello and a big shout out to Willie Dubé, and Al McNeil. So Al is a combat wounded vet, 22 years, retired as a tank commander, got blown up in his last tour in Afghanistan. Suicide bomber. Al's got one arm full of Toyota parts, and he's got some holes in him from when the explosion cooked off some of his own ammunition. Al gave me his first tank round that he fired, the shell anyway. So Al has been our go-to guy when it comes to repairing machines, rebuilding them, repainting them, fixing them up. So right where we stand, in 1888, a company was born called Thompson Manufacturing. Lasted till 1922. And they made, it was a foundry, they made bellows, and they made, Jake?
I don't know.
Pillar drills, and something else, I can't remember. So somebody alerted, actually it was Harold, wasn't it? Harold told us? Harold told us, he said, Rob, hey, you gotta check this out. He saw it on Facebook Marketplace. So, and by the way, my father excavated around this area, built this building, and did some of the, when the town, anyway, did some excavating, and they would always dig up slag and ash that was left over from that foundry from years ago. So we bought this, and it didn't look like this when we got it. So I put Al to work on it. I tasked him, so he enlisted Willie to help him make some parts. So this was a pillar drill. I'm just going to explain to you how it works. I could never figure out what got the drill to come down. I never looked into it, I guess, enough. So the only thing missing on this, there were little oil cups that you would keep full, and they were fed by gravity, so of course they would leak, but it would keep the various parts oiled. Now this is a big flywheel that just helps keep momentum, and they had modified it so it had those very familiar curved spokes that was so common in this type of machinery. So Willie, it's cast iron, hard to weld, so Willie just put spokes in there for us so it's functional. He made some of the other parts. Now, as you would spin this drill, it was pretty crude in terms of, you had a 1/2 inch shank, so all your drills had to have a 1/2 inch shank, and you would just tighten that up. Now we're missing the actual table portion, but I'll make one of those. So you'll notice that there's a big bump on this gear, and each time that would go around, there was another arm here, and if you look up top here, you see how these teeth are. So each time you would spin around, that would push this ahead 1 notch. And as you turn this, let me wind it up some. So as you're spinning this, each time it goes around, it would just click, click, click. And there was just enough play in this. There was enough play in this that it would keep weight on the drill bit, so there would be downward pressure. So in its absence, you would just sit here and you would spin that by hand and just keep an eye on how you're doing. You could change where the handle was in relation to the hub, so that would allow you to spin it faster. But either way, I wouldn't want the job of running this thing all day. But we like to have stuff like this in the shop, over in the classroom, just to kind of give the guys something to do when they get tired of cutting dovetails. So, big thank you, Al and Willie. Any vets that we should shout out to? If you've been to our class as a combat wounded vet, one of the 135 we've had, and you're watching, would you please say hello? Just do @Ken, right?
Yeah.
@Ken, anything else?
Anthony.
@Ken Anthony, ANTHONY, and then put your name and tell me what class you were in so we can give you a shout out.
We have several people, I'm not vets, but
We can't hear him.
several,
Yeah, Ken, you don't have a mic.
we have several people on from the August 22nd class.
Give him
Tom, you can repeat. Tom,
Tom from the August class.
Casper,
Casper's combat wounded vet. Casper is over in. Shall we salute? I almost did. We'll salute. I didn't mean to do that. So that's Denmark's flag. Oh, I was going to say some things that would only get me in trouble, but inside joke. Hold on a second. I'm not done with Casper. Anyway, so Casper, big tall guy, came all the way over, jet lagged. I saw his work today. He's really good at keeping these guys engaged. And he's made some boxes. Did you see his boxes that he posted today, Ken?
No.
Wow, I was impressed. I'm hard to impress when it comes to dovetails and boxes. I was impressed. Casper, awesome job. And who else?
Michael, Delvoy,
Oh, Mike. Mike, Vietnam combat wounded vet, just got his bench. So these guys are just, so we have what's called the bench brigade. I got to back up a little bit and tell you this. So we do this to support our Purple Heart Project. That means 6 times, soon to be 7 next year, 7 times a year, we bring in 7 combat wounded veterans from, we've had them as far away as Denmark and Ireland and Australia, Canada, and the United States, so 5 countries. We bring them in for a 6-day, very intense hand tool workshop. They arrive Sunday night. We start Monday morning. We're here from 7 in the morning till 10:30 at night. We do that for 6 days. And we teach them all the basics of hand tool woodworking. We cover their airfare, their hotel, their meals. We send each vet home with $4,000 worth of premium tools, same stuff that you see behind me. And thanks to Jack Lane down in Texas, and Jim Rossetti up in Moncton, New Brunswick, and Chris Chahusky, who's going to be here in the class with us next week. He helps arrange the transportation. We have civilian or military, volunteers, we'll just put it at that go out and procure the materials. They build the bench. We send them the vise, help them out a little bit. They build it to our specs, and they personally deliver it to the vet and be able to make that connection. It's an awesome endeavor. So we were just starting to see some of these benches from the last couple of classes start to get delivered to it. It is great. And Mike just got his.
Ralph Sutton.
Hey, Ralph. Big Ralph. We're talking about Ralph today because we've got a really tall guy, 7'1", coming to our class next week. And his brother's coming with him, who's 6'5", just a short guy. And we're trying to figure out how tall the bench needs to be. And Ralph's a big guy. Ralph was in our last class. Another combat wounded vet. Ralph.
Michael Cook.
Michael Cook. How are you doing, Mike?
Kent Boys.
Kent. Thank you, Kent. My wife got the charcuterie boards. They look beautiful. Thank you. She'll be sending you a note.
And Jeff O'Connor's on.
Jeffrey, if you feel like I need his
Give
picture.
him a salute.
Jeffrey. Jake's bad. So Jeff is one of the combat wounded vets whose business we support. We buy the stuff that Jeff makes, and then when we do a draw. We'll do it on Thursday night. We're already at $2,000 because we had 2 donations today from the same guy, $1,000 each. So we're going to add that, put that into the kitty. So for every $1,000 increment in donations we get tonight and Thursday night, we give away 1 prize. So it might be the shave brush from Jeff. It might be the cutting board from Bob Abbott, Bobbert, affectionately known as. Could be one of Jeff's kiss sticks. It could be one of the laser engravings on granite and or slate by Kevin Burris. Danny Bell, get to work, Danny, is going to start making stuff that we're going to do. And Kim, Jeff O'Connor's wife, who deserve any accolade that these soldiers get for the injuries sustained in combat, their wives deserve just as much. So Kim's part of our group. Kim makes these beautiful handbags. We'll have one here to show. She's going to do a patriotic one. You're going to want that. All that to say hello to Jeff.
Eric's Phillips.
Oh, Eric, yeah, Eric's out in New York. Eric came to the class and he brought a whole bunch of used hand tools that were donated by an organization he works with to let all the vets got to take home at least 2. I even got some too. I got some drill bits right over there. That it? Okay, Frick.
All right, next question comes from Curtis Heller.
Hey, Curtis.
He says, do you flatten the back of your mortise chisel to the same precision you do a bench chisel?
Jake does them for me. I used to, but you got to remember a mortise chisel, because Jeff knows about this because he's practicing his mortise chisels. A mortise chisel gets used with a fair bit of brute force. It's not like a bench chisel where you're coming in and carefully cutting to a line. No, I shouldn't say that because you are. But you're really wailing on that thing when you're chopping your mortise. So you can, if you want to, as Jake will tell you, when you're pounding this through the wood, the bevel is sliding and pushing the chisel this way. So the cutting or the shearing is being done with where the back and the sides meet. So the sharper that is, the cleaner the cut's going to be. You do need a sharp edge here, but I don't worry about getting these as precise as I do, say, these. But if you have the time, by all means, do it. Frick, next, please. Luther on?
Yep, he's answering questions as
Hey,
well.
Luther, big shout out to the Colonel, Luther Sheely. Anybody want to say anything? What? Luther will soon be going west. It's going to make it a little more difficult for us to do meetings, but we'll still manage. Anyway, he's not able to come to our class this week. His sister, who I told you about, Alice, is very sick, and if he has to go to South Carolina, it's a lot easier for him to jump on a plane in Seattle, where he is right now, than it is from Grand Bay. So we understand that's why he won't be here, but we will still have his picture prominently, a copy of each picture prominently displayed on everybody's bench, so each morning they can throw a salute to the Colonel, right alongside of Super Dave. Is Super Dave on?
He said he was going to.
He's
but
been getting
not.
slack.
I haven't seen him for a while.
Crack the whip. Come on, Soup.
All right,
Pick it up a notch.
Peter Johnson is asking, should I put a secondary bevel on my mortise chisel?
Yes, Peter. Always. For the simple reason is, why polish the entire bevel? You only use the tip. I use a secondary and a tertiary. I sharpen it the exact same way, at least the bevel side, as I do a regular bench chisel. And I will demonstrate that if somebody asks me to. Next, Rick. Did you want to introduce your alter ego?
Well, the webcam doesn't. They saw him at the beginning if they were here. Let's see. This one comes from Darren Hoosen.
Darren, where is he?
It doesn't say, but
You don't know?
You know, all
What
these
do you want
questions are
to
from
know?
the chat tonight. I do a lot of work with white oak, and I'm dulling chisels quickly using a 25-degree primary bevel with a 27 and 29-degree second and third angles. Will going to a 30-degree primary help much?
Yeah, I would try. I don't know what brand you're using, but I would definitely try that as a way. It just puts more steel behind the cutting edge. On woods like white oak, I mean, you see all of these saw handles behind me that need to get done. You know, there's cocobolo, there's snakewood in there, there is
Black and white ebony.
black and white ebony. There's somewhere in there, there's a piece of kingwood. If I take a 25-degree bevel and I'm pairing, I always do by hand that little flat spot on either side. I pair that by hand to clean it up. And in doing kingwood, as I'm pushing it, you just watch the chisel edge fold. It's that hard, stinking stuff. So try bumping it up. I would do that first, go to 30 degrees and see what happens. So if you got a 30-degree primary, you're looking at a 33, 34-degree actual cutting angle by the time you do your secondary and tertiary. But on hard, you know, you wouldn't want to use that on pine, but on really hard woods, it'll work. It will work, providing you have a good chisel. Next, Frick.
Next one comes from Rob Switzer. What about the new powdered metals like
Rob,
Lee Valley's?
Rob Switzer. I know Rob Switzer from Calgary.
You wouldn't know.
Right
It's
here.
just in the
Oh.
chat.
What about the new powdered metals like Lee Valley's PMV 11?
Can't comment, Rob. I meant to say at the beginning, I can comment on these chisels because I've used them. I don't have experience with the others. Sorry.
All
Can't help you on that
Douglas Brown says, has Rob ever used any Japanese chisels?
No, yes, a long time ago. No, not into it. Just not my style. Not good or bad, not my style. I don't pull my planes and I don't pull my saws. It's just not my style. So no, I don't. Next, Rick.
Jeff Hafner says, is there a
Jeff?
difference in prepping a new bench versus mortise chisel?
Well, I will go through and prep the back on a bench chisel so it's got a mirror polish up to 16,000 grit. And I don't do that anymore. If those ones that have been polished, I'll find one. They're the half. Okay, so there's one. Jake did it. So you just need to get yourself a Jake. Saves you a lot of time. I don't think it's that necessary. You know what? Buy it new. If you're buying an IBC chisel, they come really close in terms of how good they are, and we QC every one. So it does not go out of here unless it's better than within a half a thou being flat. Ken's in charge of that. So try it as it is, and then sharpen it and go through the process and try it again. And if you see a substantial improvement that justifies the work, then do it to the rest of them. I don't think you will, but try it. Next, Frick, please.
Next one comes from Dave Lamaison. Hi, how do you like the Nerix Richter
Dave.
chisels?
The Nerix?
Yep.
Not a fan. Not a fan. What do we got over here? There's a Nerix. Actually, I shouldn't say I had an experience with that. We bought it and we just used it for a test. Just why am I not a fan of that? Not terribly comfortable.
They buffed.
Yeah, we had to take that all out. They buffed the back, which means it rounds off the corners,
And that
Removes-
that spot.
removes all the accuracy of the back, of the flatness of the back. So we had to go in and redo all that. They don't do you any favors when they buff the back for you. I don't like the fact that that's the way it ends. So the problem with that is when you're preparing the backs of your chisels, if you happen to bump into this, it elevates your chisel and takes away your flatness of your chisel right there where you need it the most. So what I liked about the, start over here, what I liked about the, where's the Lee Nielsen? What I liked about the Lee Nielsen is it gave you a little bit of a grace area right there, not much. So when we designed the IBC, we purposely made it so that you could take it apart. This is a Vera wood handle, by the way. I think Ahmed made me that. So you can strip it down so it lays perfectly flat, so there's no obstructions. when you do the back. No interruptions at all. And that's a big deal. You don't have to do it at one time, but it's nice to be able to do it precisely. So no, not a fan of the Narix. Let's go through these. I showed you the Lee Nielsen original. Had lots of problems. So they fixed it when they came out with these. Great chisel, beautiful, good steel, feels great in the hand. Real big problem with the handles falling off. And there's all kinds of supposed fixes, but it is still a problem. The handle falls off. This is, let's go over it here. So this is a Swiss made. I liked it. I like the chisel. It's nicely balanced, but again, they polished the back. They wouldn't sell us the backs just flat. Let us do them. They polish the back, and that's a game changer because you create so much extra work in order to get rid of that radius right out here at the corner. And I don't like this. I just don't like the way that ends. Stanley, no, not even a contender. Sorry. There's the original. A friend of mine in Ontario sent me a full set of the, well, not a full set of 3. They're brand new in the box, and we have them on display out there in our tool museum. So that was the original Stanley
750?
740. I think the 720 was just a shorter chisel, but that was the industry standard at a time. Sorby gilt edge, don't even know if they still make them. That was good steel, but again, way too heavy and bulky. Marples Ridgeway, I don't think they make these anymore. Same thing, decent steel. Problem was, handle was terribly clumsy in the hand. That's the Wood River. This is, I sell these, and people are going to say claim bias. Well, I don't sell them because I had the opportunity. I don't sell them because I had the opportunity to sell them. I sell them because for the money, it's a decent chisel. Again, it's a socket though, and the problem you have with the socket chisel. Okay, don't come off. All right.
Couple people saying in the chat that Wood River has.
They have a different. Yeah. Yeah, I don't like their other ones at all. These came afterwards. In fact, I was working with Darren Lawrence this was their end result, because the other ones were in the same category as the Stanley Sweethearts, I think. So then the Narix came along, and I told you why I didn't like that. That's a blue spruce, beautiful chisel, beautiful chisel.
Little small.
A little small in the hand. That's, if there's any criticism at all, it's the handle's a little bit small. So if you if you wear a large glove or bigger, this is going to be really small in your hand. And there's the IBC. So why do I promote that? Because I'm the guy that went to work with IBC to develop it. So it has what we want in it. I like the fact that you can custom your handles. So if you want your handles to be, well, there's all kinds of different ones. Here's the ones we do. We make our own handles right here. I stand over there at that lathe. You can show them the shavings on the floor. Don't disturb Moose. See the shavings on the floor? I turn about 100 handles a week. Do I, Ken?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
If you pester it enough.
If you pester me enough. Made out of cherry. So you can make whatever kind of handle on it you want. I like the fact that you can take it apart and you can prepare the back so that it's flat from one end to the other. Just a really good chisel. So far, it's the best of all the features that I've used over the years in one chisel, and that's it right there. Take it as a bias if you want. It doesn't matter. If you want a good chisel, you ask me, that's it. That's the ones we sell. Next question, Frick. Any more vets to say hello to, Ken? Is Kevin on? Kevin Burse?
Yeah, I already told you that. You mentioned him already.
No, I didn't. No. Hey, Kev. No, Kev was on there with us today. So Kev's in the process of moving. I won't tell you where he's going until he tells me it's okay. But Kev I got a bunch of these that Kev's made for us. This one. If you don't understand that, you need to read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It could change your life. Over here I have, I remember the name of this ship. So Kevin will do any of these for you. So that's a very famous Canadian cruiser, I think. Is that a cruiser, Ken? Do you know? I don't know much. I don't know enough about Navy. Somebody will correct me. So I just have to find a spot for that because I don't have a stand for it. And then out there, if you look, Jake can't see, is our mission statement for the Purple Heart Project. And then over in our shipping room, we have our mission statement for our business, RC Woodworking. So if you've got a date and time that's important, get Kevin to carve it in stone for you. Anybody else, Ken? Is Kim on? Kim O'Connor?
I haven't noticed that she is.
Jeff's better half.
Jeff.
Is Danny on?
Nope.
Did anybody hear from Super Dave yet?
No.
Missing in action. AWOL.
Frick?
At large.
He's
Yeah.
out saving.
Yes. Yeah, inland New York.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
Question comes from John Hayes. He's from Windsor, Ontario.
Hey, John.
He
God
says,
save the God save the king.
are there chisels more suitable?
By the way, the Queen died this past week, so we pass on our condolences, particularly to those in the Commonwealth.
Ready?
Yep.
Kim is here.
Kim?
Oh, she's on with Jeff.
Hi, Kim. Keep him straight. Keep him straight.
All right, John
Did we
Hayes.
find out if Super Dave's on?
Are you done?
Go ahead, Frick.
John Hayes from Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Are there chisels more suitable for hardwoods than softwoods?
No.
Not really, John. Just if you're, as I mentioned, if you're dealing with a lot of softwoods, then just grind them down to 17 degree. If you can't do it or don't want to do it yourself, we sell them already ground at 17 degree. I just find that low angle does a much better job on softwoods. Standard or hardwoods, and you're going to need 25 degree. I don't go to 30, except on the bench chisel or on the mortise chisels. So no, you really don't need. A complete set would be. I'll tell you this. A complete set. Let me just pull it off the top of my head. If I was going out today or advising someone on what to buy for chisels, if you're working with softwoods, then I would have a 1/4 and a 1/2 that are 17 degree. For my standard chisels or my hardwood chisels, I would have an 1/8, I would have a 1/4, I would have a 1/2, and I would have a 3/4 or a 1 inch. Now you can get some in-between sizes if you want, but I would consider that to be a pretty complete set that's going to cover the bases for you. If you're going to do mortise chisels as well, then your most common mortise chisel is going to be your 1/4 and your 1/2. Remember, whenever you're cutting mortises, you're always following that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. In other words, there's your piece of wood. Your mortise is going to be 1/3 the thickness of the wood here, 1/3 of the thickness of the mortise, and 1/3 of the thickness out here on the other cheek. Okay, so two most common dimensions we work with are 3/4. So if you're working with 3/4 stock, you're going to be using a 1/4 inch mortise, and 1.5 inches, and if you're working with 1.5 inch stock, then you're going to use a 1/2 inch mortise chisel. So 1/4 and 1/2. However, I'm going to take it a little bit further. It's nice when you're chopping them by hand, it's nice to be able to go in and free the broken material or the jammed material up, not with a 1/4, because it's a very, very precise fit and you're going to want to wreck the wall. So I always like to step down one, and in this case I would use a 3/16. These are they flex too much. These are nice and stout. So you could use the 1/4 here, or you could throw in a 3/8 here, which you could use the same way I use the 3/16 when I cut quarters. You could use the 3/8 when you cut 1/2 inch. So you had to look at that upside down. Sorry.
They heard you talk.
Oh yeah. Okay. Next, Frick.
Next one comes from James Pearson.
Hi, James.
He says, what is the advantage of a firmer chisel, or is there one?
So firmers were just, they looked like this. There was no tape, there was no bevel on the side. They were just square. And I don't,
Wait, how's that different from a mortise chisel?
well, your mortise chisel is more like this. At least square in cross section, if not taller. So this is going to be flat and rectangular shape. And I'm 61. I've been woodworking. I've been woodworking seriously since I was in my late teens. Been woodworking around wood and wooden tools since I was in my early single digits. So let's say I've got close to 50 years in, and I've never needed a firmer chisel. So I think you can live just fine without it. Next, Frick.
Next one comes from Ken Boyce. He says, how do you sharpen the half blind? Kent. Yeah, that's what I said.
Oh, I thought you said Ken.
Kent Boyce. How do you sharpen the half blind chisel?
You don't.
How do you sharpen a half blind? Well, so what Kent is talking about is we make these. And that's designed for cutting a half-blind dovetail. So if you can imagine cutting, oh, actually I have a sample right here. If you can imagine cutting the dovetails in the front of your drawer, when you're cutting the ones in the back, your drawer, and you're cutting between your pins, you can easily go all the way, halfway from one side, halfway from the other. It's nice and clear. But when you're cutting these ones and you're removing the walnut material in between the pins, you got to be able to get into that corner and you got to be able to get into that corner. Well, if you do it with, you can't do it with, I mean, I suppose you could do it with a 1/4-inch chisel, but even with a 1/4-inch chisel, how come I don't have a 1/4-inch chisel right there? I thought I had one. If you're trying to use a 1/4-inch chisel to do that, and you're trying to get into that corner, look what you have to do in order to get into that corner. You got to go beyond over here. You can buy what are called
Fishtail or skew? Which one?
skew chisels, but you have to have 2 of those, one skewed to the right, one skewed to the left. And the problem with a skew chisel, if you can imagine a chisel that has been angled out on the end, I thought I had one here, I never use it. If you can imagine a chisel that is angled like that at the tip. So in order to get it, that allows you to get into that corner, but you're having to push with your line of force off center. And you're paring through end grain, which is a hard cut. You have to have a left and you have to have a right. The big advantage of the half-blind chisel is same tool, pushing straight on allows you to get into this corner, allows you to get into that corner. Now, for Kent's question, how do you sharpen it? Well, you really don't need to do it very often. It's used mostly under just the weight of your hand pushing it. I never pound on this. So you would sharpen the leading edge like you would sharpen any bevel edge chisel.
We send them sharpened as well.
We send them sharpened, ready to go. Now, we back grind here so that when you're getting into that corner, instead of it being blunt on the side, which would make it very tough to push in, by having this beveled, allows you to sneak into those corners and cut those fibers. Do I ever worry about sharpening this? No, because it really doesn't, this really doesn't do anything. It's just a clearance angle so that you can get into the corner. So all your cutting is being done out here. You want to be careful, by the way, because I had a bad habit. I would always clean my chisels like this as I'm using them. Well, you only do that once on this chisel and you realize why you don't do that. Next question, please.
All right, we only have a couple minutes, so whip through these next ones.
All right.
Eric St. Philip says, is there any value to specialty chisels
Eric.
like dual edge 90-degree inside corner chisels?
Dual edge.
Is there any value to specialty chisels like the
90-degree.
dual edge 90-degree inside corner chisel?
Eric, I can't even.
Well, I assume he means you have one up there, don't you?
What?
An inside corner? A carving chisel.
A dual edge inside. No, I don't know.
It's got it
I
right
don't.
there.
I don't. What?
Fifth chisel from the right.
Here?
No,
This.
no. That one right there.
Oh, that's not a chisel.
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay,
that?
4th.
This.
Yeah. What's
Well,
that?
That's a
Oh.
gouge. That's a gouge.
I had one.
Eric, you're gonna have to be a little more specific, brother. I'm not quite following you on that one. Next one, Frick.
This one comes from our buddy Jeff O'Connor.
Jeffrey.
Next.
He knows everything.
Yeah, I know.
Doesn't he, Kim?
Next.
What possibly hit next?
What do you think of the swan neck chisel to remove mortise waste?
Nah, never. It doesn't matter what the Jeff. Doesn't matter what the bottom of your mortise looks like. You're not using it for glue surface, and you don't need to get in there and do that. If you chop your chisel properly, because I know you've been practicing, you're going in, and if you get a bump in the middle, all you do is you go in. If you get a bump in the middle, you just go in and just do this. Little close ones like that, it'll just turn it to crumble it. That's when I often go in, I go a size lower, and I'll just use my finger and I'll just scrape along the bottom to get rid of any little bit of a bump. But no, those swan necks, I think that's a little bit of a,
Gimmick.
Well, I don't want to say gimmick, but I've lived 50 years without it, and I don't think you need it. Besides, Kim wouldn't let you buy it anyway. Next, Frick.
Tim F. in Rhode Island.
Hey, Tim.
What is the advantage of a socket chisel? Is it just a comfort thing?
What is the advantage to a socket chisel?
I don't think there is.
I don't know. The disadvantage is the handles fall off. I would have to say that it must have been a manufacturing advantage because, you know, I can't think of it. I can't think of any. So typically there's socket and tang. Well, actually there's three, and then there's combination. I don't have any tang only here, but a tang chisel would typically have a little shelf right here. You know, this would end in a blunt shelf, and there'd be a tang that would go up into the handle.
You know what this is?
Sort of, kind of, but these are kind of a combination of. So strictly a socket chisel is this one, where there's a socket, and that is supposed to be the same, match it, so that when you drive it in, it gets nice and tight. Problem is, as the wood shrinks and expands, you pick your chisel up, you're heading over to wherever you're going, you're holding onto it like this, and it falls off on the ground and always goes down point first. That's the way they're made. So I don't think there is an advantage, really. Next, Frick.
Okay, last question.
At least I haven't discovered one.
Last question's from Jonathan Walsh.
Hi, Jonathan.
I've never really used a mallet, only a hammer to do a little chisel work that I've done. Can you explain the mechanics of a mallet versus a hammer, and how your mallets are made, impregnated, cosmonized, etc.?
Wow, that's a plant. Thank you. So this is often called a carver's mallet. There are other types of mallets, kind of a hammer style mallet, which this one is made by Ahmed. This is tulip wood and Vera, and that is designed to work more like a hammer. Now, the only problem I have with the hammer style is they have a tendency to glance off if you don't hit them right on. I don't know why. That may be just me. I prefer this. Of course, the hockey tape makes it successful. This is maple head, and
Sean.
Sean Mahaffey does the resin impregnating. So what they do is they take the maple, they dry it, bone dry, and then they put it in a chamber with a liquid of some sort. And as they pull a vacuum on the chamber, the air in the wood has to come out. It has to be replaced with something, so it draws in the resin. And when it hardens, you have extra weight, probably about a 40% increase. It makes it a lot harder. And as I mentioned, it increases the weight. So Sean makes up the blocks for us. Ken and the boys drill them and then install the handles. We put 2 screws on either side to help hold it in place. One of us turns them down, sprays them and finishes them. One of the boys, usually one of my boys, tape the handles. We get it ready to go to you. Now this is a tool that's going to get beat up and abused, right? You're hitting things with it, so it's not going to last forever. They'll eventually expire, and then you buy another one from the same place you bought that one. These are gorgeous. These are I don't use these because they're too pretty, but I like nice things around me. That's why I married my wife.
Okay,
We're out? Really? Done?
yeah.
So next week, Thursday night, same time, 7 Eastern, we're going to have a very special program for you. You're going to see all the guys in the class. There'll be some tall ones. There'll be some short ones. There'll be 7 combat wounded vets. There'll be several. There's always several vets. We have a guy coming
specifically
who
there's
was SEAL
7.
Team 6, Vietnam era. He was with the very first SEAL team when it was developed. Friend of Jeff O'Connor. He just keeps sending guys to us, and that's a huge thank you to you, Jeff, for doing that. We've had David in our last class. We had Pete in our class before that. We're going to have a Connor reunion. Yeah, so please join us. And our expenses for doing this have gone through the roof like everything else. We used to think that we were going on old numbers. It cost us $3,500 per vet. It's actually somewhere now around almost $7,000. we'll do it regardless. But if you want to be part of it, if you would like to contribute to this, go to our website, RobCosman.com. On the left-hand side, pull down the menu under PHP. It'll tell you how to donate. And the good thing about that is there aren't fees being taken out. All of that will end up going to either feeding or housing or carting or sending tools home with these guys. And they deserve it. Big thank you to those of you who support us. We certainly appreciate it, and they really appreciate it. Anybody else say hello to Ken before we close? No. Thanks for Ken and for Moose for being here. If you're looking for it, it's getting a little chilly. Go to patssecretgarden.com and get yourself a dead cat sweater, and you'll never be cold again. Quick little story. I have a friend out in Calgary, and he bought a dead cat sweater for his wife for whatever occasion it was, and he came in and she goes, I'm not wearing that thing. He says, she doesn't go anywhere without it. As my friend in Fredericton told me when he bought his, he goes, there's got to be little heaters in this thing. It is warm. Chris Davenport, good friend of ours, engineer, huge part of the success of our business. Usually he's here with us, but he wasn't able to, but he'll be here Thursday night. Have a good week, folks. We will see you soon.
We got to do the draw.
Oh,
No.
No, the draw's on Thursday night,
come
Frick.
on, Frick.
Get with the program, Frick. Come on.
Do this.
What are you doing over there anyway?
Sleeping?
You and that big green ball.
He just woke up.
All right.
Over and out.
Yep.
See you guys soon.